start to share my screen. Maybe. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna start here. So first, since I am part of the league, I just wanted to start off. Can everybody see the screen, by the way? Okay, just making sure. So since I am part of the league, I just wanted to start off by reading the mission statement. So the Junior League of Boston is an organization of women committed to promoting volunteerism, developing the potential of women, and improving communities through the effective action and leadership of trained volunteers. Its purpose is exclusively educational and charitable. So to start off, I thought it would be a good idea just to kind of go over the definition of advocacy, because I know it's kind of a new concept to a lot of people. So advocacy is defined as any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports or defends, or pleads on behalf of others. So essentially what it boils down to is public awareness, but then it takes it up another level. So bringing attention to a cause and then showing your support for it by being a voice, especially for the voiceless, which is actually why I chose to do the media advocacy graduate program to begin with. Advocacy is mostly nonpartisan, which is why the league has decided to make it more of a focus this year and in the future, especially on issues relating to women's self-esteem and health. We've also been working with the Boston Food Access Council. I just wanted to give a shout out to Sarah for all of her amazing work with that. She's been doing a really great job with everything this year. So I just wanted to give a brief refresher on bills, because really if you don't understand the bills, then it's hard to understand why writing letters really does matter. So I thought we could bring it back to elementary school, and also it's just because when I was doing this whole training, I had this song stuck in my head the whole time, and I wanted to not be the only one. So we don't have to watch the whole thing.
Woo. You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills.
Okay, so I won't make you guys watch the whole thing, but that's basically the gist of it, and I know that shows more so on the national level, but the process is essentially the same on the state level as well. So I did have an activity that's at the end, but to complete it, I just wanted everybody to take a few minutes to write down the following. It'll be used at the end. If you don't have time to do it in like the next 3 minutes or so, just feel free to take a picture of this screen. So on a piece of paper or in your notes app, I just wanted everybody to please write down your favorite superhero, your favorite celebrity, Your occupation does not have to be the one you have now. Your home state, birthday, and month, day. The last text you sent, your favorite number, a verb, an adjective plus a noun. Your most controversial and popular opinion, an adverb, your favorite teacher's last name, and your least favorite email salutation. And if you finish early, feel free to start adding questions or come up with any questions that you wanted to ask at the end. So let's give everybody a couple minutes to do that. Okay, I'll give everyone like 30 more seconds. And like I said, if you aren't finished yet, feel free to take a picture. Okay, so now into the good stuff. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about is probably the most common question that I've received when talking about this. Does writing letters really work? In short, yes. You're the one who elected these people that you're writing to. They do want to hear about what matters to you. They can't help you if they don't know what's important to you. They want to help you, and besides the obvious of if they're not helping you, you're not going to vote for them again next time. That's literally their job, is to listen to you. So yes, writing these letters really does work. It's a great way to bring attention to what you're passionate about. When it comes to the method of communication, this is something I get a lot of questions about as well, is whether you should do a letter versus an email or use social media. Emails are better than social media, but letters are typically the recommended method because they do tend to be seen as a little bit more personal and impactful than an email. Also, it's important to know that there is not a way for anybody to really track whether a representative or a bill is tracked over social media the way that it is email or letter. Every letter that anyone receives is scanned and categorized in a system that they really just don't have a way to do so with social media to the extent that they can with letters and emails. So it is a little bit more impactful because they actually are able to get an idea of how many people are writing about these things. While I would love to guarantee that a letter will be read, obviously I can't, but it's always worth a try. And that's why as I go through this, I'll talk about some more steps and tips to really make that letter really impactful, because those are the letters that get read the most, and those are the ones that really make the difference. It's usually read by an intern first, as they're the ones doing a lot of that categorization. So once it gets through them, then that's what's going to get passed on. So how do you write a good letter? I wanted to break this up into two parts. So first, the steps to writing a good letter, and then I'll go into some more tips and tricks. So first and foremost, it's really important that you're formatting it properly. It should always be formatted like a business letter, so putting the person you're addressing's name at the top and their address and then the date. And you also need to make sure that you're using the correct salutation. So whether it's the honorable or senator, if it's a chairperson of a committee, then chairman or chairwoman. Secondly, they want to know who you are, and they need to know who you are. They want to know why they should read this letter from you. So make sure that you tell them up front, and then add your contact information, including your address at the bottom, so that they can verify that you are in their district. And then get really into the meat of it. So why are you writing? Address your opinion in the first paragraph and always reiterate it at the end. People have short attention spans. It does not hurt to say it more than once. And if there is a bill that's already in development, you always want to make sure to mention it by name. I also recommend bolding it. Just again, makes it stand out a little bit more. The last two important steps are to include a strong call to action at the end. So again, they need to know what you want them to do. Do you want them to support this bill? Do you want them to reject this bill? Do you want them to co-sponsor this bill, etc.? So tell them exactly what you want them to do, what is the purpose of you writing this letter. And lastly, you want to make sure that you thank them for their time. So again, like I said, there are definitely certain steps that you need to take into account to follow what's more or less the standard format, but it's the things in between all of that that will really set your letter apart. So one of the biggest tips and necessities that makes a letter considered good is to keep it short. It should never be more than a page long, and typically 3 to 5 brief paragraphs should be enough to get your point across. Next, you want to be polite and honest. Even if you didn't vote for the particular representative or senator that you're writing to, they don't need to know that. And you don't ever want to make things up for the sake of writing a letter. So if you're writing about something because, say, a friend or a family member asked you to write, but this doesn't really impact you personally, you don't need to make up a story about why you want to write. You can just say that you're writing on behalf of somebody else. Again, it's just a common courtesy issue, but you would be surprised by how many people make things up that can always be verified. The most important part is definitely to personalize it. This is the biggest tip. So while a lot of time these coalitions, So while a lot of times coalitions or organizations will offer you templates that you can use to write your representatives, you really don't want to use them as a guideline, as more than like a guideline of necessary information. So maybe it's giving you certain data or statistics, but really the best way to make an impact on the recipient is to establish a connection with them. And you can't really do that if you're using the same letter that everybody else is using. And you want to show them that you're a human. This is your chance to tell them why they should listen to you. If the issue that you're writing about has to do with schools and you're a teacher and you have been for 10 years, that's something that they should know. You want to make sure to mention that. And that's also why I recommend starting out by writing letters for things that you are passionate about, because it really will show through whether it's something that you're just writing for the sake of writing versus something that really does represent you. And also just important to note, and for the sake of being part of Junior League, you can always identify yourself as a volunteer within the Junior League of Boston, but you should not be identifying yourself as a representative of the league unless told otherwise for any specific things. So there's a really great website called malegislator.gov if you want to know who you can send it to. So it depends on the bill or the act. So I'll go through this website with you because it's been really helpful for me. Sorry, all my things are. So this is the malegislator.gov website. So you want to send it to your representative, then you would just go to legislators, find your legislators, can type in your address. So I'll just do mine. So right there, it tells me who my representative is and who my state senator is. And then from there, you can get their contact information. And also on here, you can go through too and see different committees. So that's another really important thing to know is sometimes even if they're not your representative, but they're the chairman of a certain committee. So Jay Livingstone is on the Committee of Higher Education, but maybe somebody else was. You can always write to them as well if you wanted to reach out to a specific chairman or chairwoman. So you can also go through up here to the committees and commissions, and it will show you different assignments as well. So once you've sent the letter too, your work is not always done right away. So there are a few different ways that you can keep involved. So one, you can go back to the MALegislator.gov website and track those bills. So you can go to bills and laws. So I'll just type H2, see what happens. So of course nothing's going to show up there. But I'll just click this one and it should show you what process it's at. It can also give you recommendations of similar bills that you can take a look at as well. So this is always a great way to track bills and see where they're at. So it shows you all the different actions that have been taken. So a new draft was just substituted yesterday, which is really helpful to know. So just to kind of keep track of everything, you can always go through here. And just wanted to point out too that you can do this as well for U.S. Congress on govtrack.us. It's a non-governmental source of information, which has been really helpful just in terms of keeping up with things throughout the country as well. Another idea is you can always join a coalition or an organization that is really leading the charge for change. And even if you don't decide to join that coalition, it's always a good idea to sign up for updates from them if there is one. For instance, there's a Parity on Board coalition that we have worked with for one of the letters that I'm going to talk about later on that sends out frequent updates about what's happening with that specific bill. So it's always a good idea just to kind of sign up for updates. It kind of goes along with the no spamming rule. Even if you're really passionate about something, you really shouldn't be writing too often unless that coalition tells you to write more letters or you've been tracking the bill and you see that it was maybe refiled and you need to write again. But really one letter should be considered enough, but that's why you should always encourage your family and your friends to write their own letters. Again, you should also track your replies too, especially if you are working with some sort of organization, because if they're not getting responses, but you are, you can always pass that information along and it gives them a better idea of where things are at. And lastly, if they do end up supporting or co-sponsoring a bill that you asked for, it's always just nice to send a thank you letter. I used to work at Disney and I've pretty much worked in hospitality for most of my life, and I can guarantee you that just being nice to people will get you a long way. And so again, just kind of a nice courtesy to offer. So at this point, I did just want to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes or so. Just had a couple of questions, so I know some of you did already answer this in the chat, but one, have you ever written your representative a letter, and if so, what did you write about? And two, are there any issues that your community is facing that you hope to be an advocate for now or in the future? And if you answer no to both of those questions, if you have any questions that maybe is like a group question that you wanted to ask either now or later on, feel free to talk about that as well.
Okay, I'll open up the breakout rooms now.
Thank you, Shannon. I wanted to give a couple of examples of effective letter writing in action, just again to give you an idea of the fact that it really does work. So one example would be S2931. So it's an act to ensure safe patient access to emergency care. It's also called Laura's Law. This was created in honor of Laura Levis. She was a Somerville resident. She died of an asthma attack outside of a hospital in 2016. She was literally right outside, but because of unclear signage and miscommunication between the 911 dispatcher and EMTs and the hospital itself, she unfortunately never made it inside the ER and she passed away. So ever since then, her husband, Peter DeMarco, has been advocating for change on her behalf. He did the research, he contacted the right people, and he's done a lot of writing, including a really beautiful article that he wrote for the Boston Globe, which is where he and Laura met. So if you haven't read that before, I do recommend taking a look at that. I wanted to share this one quote. I know you can read it, but it says, "I can't tell you how many people supported me at every step of the way. It's taken a village of people writing letters." That was a direct quote taken from him in an interview after it was eventually signed into law a couple months ago. In one of the articles I was reading, looking into the process of Laura's Law, it is mentioned that right before one of the last couple of meetings, decide whether or not this bill would go to the next step to see if it would be more forward in consideration. He asked supporters to call and email, and 2 representatives received over 400 emails and 300 phone calls in a matter of like 2 or 3 days. And ultimately, that was what helped influence their decision to move this to the next step. So it was passed in December 2020 and then in January 2021. And like I said, it was just signed into law on January 15th by Governor Baker. But on a lighter note, I also wanted to share this example of letter writing. So I don't know if anybody else has been following the state dyno, but I have. I have no idea why I received an email about voting for the state dinosaur, but I did. But interestingly enough, it actually started out with essentially the same general intention as this training. Representative Jack Lewis just really wanted a way to talk to Massachusetts residents about the legislative process and tell them more about it. And he wanted it to be something that he could talk to a 5-year-old about, a 15-year-old, 45, 85, didn't matter, and just teach them more about the legislative process. So he realized that there are currently only 9 other states that have a state dinosaur, decided Massachusetts needed to become number 10, created this really fun, lighthearted bill about first voting for what the state dino would be, and then once it was announced by him and the Museum of Science, I've now been getting emails about writing letters to representatives asking them to co-sponsor this bill so that Massachusetts can become number 10. So like I mentioned earlier, the League has been taking advocacy and is a more front position this year and in the years to come. So one of the issues that we've chosen to support, because it is a nonpartisan issue, has been H 4153. Well, that's what it was at the time of the letter that we wrote. It was an act to ensure gender parity and racial and ethnic diversity on public boards and commissions. So I wrote a letter to Chairman Aaron Mishlowitz, Speaker Robert DeLeo, and Representative Jay Livingstone, and stated who the League was, what we do, and why this is important to us. And again, going back to the difference in the steps and the tips that I was talking about earlier and using those form letters, I did use the form letters that the Gender Parity Coalition did offer to grab some statistics and data from. I did look at other League letters from the past just to kind of get an idea of formatting. But I took all that information and really personalized it and made it more current, one, to reflect the issue that we were talking about now, not something that was written about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Like I said, I included that data that I did think was necessary, but I also talked about why that was important to us as a League. And then Kathleen signed it and we sent it off. As of the most recent update, it was just refiled in the Massachusetts House and the state Senate. So the Parity on Board Coalition is actually asking for additional letters at this time. They would like to eventually have half of the House and half of the Senate become co-sponsors of this bill. Another act that's been really important to the League this year has been the Crown Act, so creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. And shout out to Courtney for that one, because she's been doing a lot of the efforts surrounding that. I know you guys probably can't read this. This is pretty small, but I just wanted to kind of give an example. So this was a letter I wrote to Chairman Michlowitz. So again, 1 page. The first paragraph was the longest because that's where I really went into what the Junior League was. But 4 brief-ish paragraphs and then a sentence at the end, which was the call to action. And just again, just kind of show you that format with the business letter type formatting. So in the breakout rooms, I did just have everybody talk about any issues that they thought might be something that they wanted to advocate for now or in the future, but still I know a lot of people don't always know what to support. So one of the places that I recommend starting is Congressgov. This shows pretty much everything. And even if it's showing something in another state, sometimes it can give you inspiration. So maybe something's happening in Colorado, and you think, wow, Massachusetts needs that too. So that could always be a source of inspiration. But also it just has a lot of really great advanced searches. So you can look by policy area, so again, just an idea to kind of give you some inspiration on things that maybe you didn't even realize were issues until you saw someplace else had a similar idea. But really the best idea is to start locally. This is where most things start, honestly, is something that's happening in your neighborhood or your community or your school or something like that. So is there something in your immediate community that people are facing? And then going off of that, do you have a solution for it? There's one example that I thought was kind of funny was the TLDR, or Too Long Didn't Read Act of 2018. There was a man who received a letter from, I think it was the Veterans Affairs Office, about his insurance. It was about 6 or 7 pages long. He skimmed the first page, realized, okay, nothing important in here, threw out the letter. Turns out, very last paragraph of the very last page told him steps he needed to take for his insurance account. So he complained about it, wrote a bunch of letters, and now there is an act about this saying that if you are going to do that and send somebody a 5-page long letter, you need to tell them up front. So if you've ever had something like that, it could be something silly, it could be something more serious. In the breakout room, I shared, the first letter I ever wrote was on behalf of a friend. So it's just kind of taking a look at those local issues, things that are affecting you, your loved ones, your family, your friends.
Unfortunately, this is wildly trivial, but the issue that is facing my very local community right now is that my street has the same name as the street that's perpendicular to it, and ours is the smaller street. So all of our packages get delivered to the wrong place. And so we are talking about advocating as a street to get our street name changed.
See, sometimes it can be something that you might think it sounds silly the first time somebody says it, but that would actually save a lot of trouble for the people, for the mailman, for everybody. So I say go for it. If you still aren't really sure where to start with everything, we did just, with help from Kate, I did come up with a few ideas of acts and bills that you can look into supporting. So there's one about requiring the labeling of allergens and prepared foods. One concerning safety of school children embarking and disembarking school buses. I know a lot of people have kids or nieces or nephews in the area, so always a good place to start is, I really feel like youth-centered ones are usually the place that most people start out with. There's another one, age 26, about modernizing Massachusetts alcohol laws, and then one up in Senate for next generation roadmap for Massachusetts climate policy. Okay, so if you guys can't read this, I can make my screen bigger. But at the beginning, I had everybody go ahead and write down a list of random things, like your favorite superhero and your birthday. So what I really was wanting to do is just show you how it is pretty easy to get started with letter writing. But at the end of the day, it really is those personal touches that make them count. So this isn't really supposed to make a lot of sense, honestly, and it probably will not. I did this the other day when I was finalizing this, and mine made no sense at all. But it's not really the point for right now. I just wanted to show everybody that it's pretty easy to get everything you want to get across in one page. So if you just want to take a minute or two to plug in some of your answers, you can. And if anyone has a really great one that they want to share, feel free. And Rachel, yes, I can definitely do that. Send out some of the templates, letters available, make them available to people. So I'll go ahead and share mine just for the sake of it. So mine says, Dear the Honorable Captain America, my name is Brittany Spears, and I am an interior designer within your district in North Carolina. I'm writing to express my support of H 1201 and to ask you to support this bill. Sorry, I just saw this. I'm finishing up a presentation I'm doing on Tuesday, and I'm on a roll. It's important to me because in our state, 13 individuals face this problem every day. By increasing access, we will help these individuals. H 1201 will also help to dance this issue head on and create lasting change within our community. As a sparkly mermaid, this issue is especially important to me because sprinkles are absolutely disgusting. I blindingly ask that you consider co-sponsoring this bill, or you can also say, please ask Speaker Bonner to report this bill out of committee and to the House floor. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for your consideration. Cheers, Madeline. So again, probably won't make a lot of sense, but essentially these are the areas where you really want to plug it in. So the who you are, the where you are, and the why you're writing are really those things that you want to make sure that you put the most effort in and the most personal touches in, because that's what's going to ultimately make that big impact. So I did want to make sure I had a few minutes at the end just to answer any additional questions, or if anybody had any comments, anything in their breakout rooms that you wanted to share with everybody else, feel free.
So I have one comment. So I work in policy for the state, and I work for an executive office. So I'm a consumer of advocacy, not necessarily the legislative advocacy, but executive advocacy. And I can tell you that there are issues that we really want people to be weighing in on. And like, for instance, we have a survey out now for residents of Andover, North Andover, and Lawrence in response to the gas explosions in the Merrimack Valley. And I think that we have maybe 50 responses, and the survey's been out for a couple of weeks at this point. So we would do anything to get more people to actually respond to this. So I think that a lot of people hear that about kind of talking to their government officials or their elected officials and say like, oh, like what do they want to hear from me? And like, no, really, like people want to hear from you, and it's really important. And it's actually very upsetting and kind of sad when you have a public process and people aren't a part of it and people aren't participating in it.
Awesome. Yeah, so definitely people should look into that. And I feel like these steps, like surveys, letters, are usually where most people start, and things can build from there. And again, I think the whole purpose of this training was just to show you that really no act is too small. So answering a survey, writing a letter, it takes maybe 5-10 minutes out of your day, but it makes a huge impact. So don't ever feel like the things that you're doing don't matter, because they do. I see there's a question about getting asked to write your representative using a pre-filled form, or is it better to write an individual one and email or mail it? So I think if you're asked by somebody to use something that's already done, I think that's okay to do. If you wanted to go ahead and do an individual one over that, I think that's a good idea, but I think it just depends on the issue as well. Like with a state dyno one, that's a pretty informal bill. So I would probably use the template that they provided, because I really don't have any personal connections to dinosaurs. So it's probably not going to be super impactful if I take the time to make an individual one and just talk about how much I love Jurassic Park. So yeah, I think the pre-filed form is fine in certain situations, but if it is something that you do feel very close ties to, then I would recommend doing an individual one and mailing it or emailing it instead. Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Sarah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. If you think of any other questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'm at the training advocacy@jlboston.org email. Otherwise, you can look me up in the directory. Madeline, last name's Olson, like the twins. Send me an email to my personal email as well. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or if you think of anything else that you want additional support with from individuals within the league, maybe like surveys or anything like that, feel free to reach out. But again, thank you guys so much for joining. I hope everybody has a great week. Yes, Sarah, very true. Please feel free to join us. We'd love to have you.